and admit all of our attendees.
That live stream is closed. That live streams to where? LinkedIn?
Yep. And it's going to LinkedIn and on YouTube. So we are live now. You can take it away there, Bryce.
Awesome. Well, I'll do a quick hello to everybody and let everybody know we are live. Thanks for joining us. We're super excited to have Bryce and Megan from MindFrame Connect here. I wasn't able to make the session last week, but I did check it out after the fact. But Bryce came and talked to the investors last week, and it was amazing. So I'm really excited to check out this one here this week. Feel free to ask questions in the chat and keep it lively and engaged for Bryce to have some fun with y'all. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bryce to take the reins.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Neil. Appreciate it. We really had a good session with you guys on mentorship, whatever it was a week or two ago. Very engaging, good group of people. So very happy to be back here. I'm going to give a little origin story on why we're here to set context. Then I'll share my screen. We got a lot of material to cover. We got 1 hour. We're going to move quickly. The one comment I'll make is for those comfortable, please turn your video on. It makes it so much better as a presenter to be able to engage and rather than seeing these empty boxes. So thank you for that. Origin story is as follows. So my background, I don't know if it was circulated, but my business partners and I predominantly grew up in the telecom entrepreneurial world. Our largest deal was a company called Win Mobile, which probably some will have heard of. We started that from scratch, built that in a very big scale up, fighting Rogers, Telus, and Bell for a decade. Hired 1,000 people in the first year, raised billions of dollars of capital, blah, blah, blah. 7 years ago, we sold that business to our good friends in Calgary, Shaw Communications. We got a lot of Albertans here. I'm from Saskatchewan, by the way, so I declare my roots to your neck of the woods. And interestingly, as we know, Rogers, our good friends, are trying to acquire Shaw, and the oligopoly does what it does and so on. And that's where we lived. After we sold that company, my business partners and I kind of came together, decided what we wanted to do. We took the proceeds of that and we built an investment platform that we call Global Life Capital that is focused on investing in a lot of things, but with a pretty heavy skew to venture tech and innovation. And in going into that world 7 years ago, we saw real interesting things starting to happen in the Canadian ecosystem. You guys are probably familiar with Techstars, Founder Institute, Creative Destruction Lab. Some bigger companies were, Shopify was being born in that era, and so on. And so we said, look, we live in this ecosystem. We have a brand. We want to be part of it. We want to invest in it. We want to work with founders. We love working with founders. So what that did when you make that decision is it takes you into the ecosystem in a bit of a mentor capacity. We have 100 direct investments. I would mentor at Techstars and all these other places, and I'm having these interactions continuously with founders. And I like to say it this way. By 2018, I had probably mentored 1,000 founders in various capacities. And of course, I had been a mentor as a leader in my prior life as an operator. And in 2018, I went to Creative Destruction Lab, which, by the way, as you know, has a Calgary chapter. And probably many of you have heard of that program, as a mentor in Halifax, actually at Dalhousie. And I walked in and there were 70-ish mentors that day working together. It was the first time in my life that I had seen other mentors in action. Everything that I'd done to date was me with founder, me with team, whatever, never really being taught how to be a mentor, just kind of on the job, using all of my habits and my style as a business person. I came out of this meeting in 5 years ago, less than 5 years ago. I was 47 after having gone through that career. And I realized that I've been mentoring wrong my entire life. Okay. And let me tell you, that is a hard revelation because I'm a pretty self-aware human who likes to always be improving. And I realized that I was doing a lot of bad things, bad behaviors, bad practices to founders that were probably sending them in the wrong directions. And so that was a very big revelation to me to change how I had approached mentorship. And it sent me on a multi-year journey to get better at the craft. And what I realized is that most mentors are in the same boat as me. They don't have training. They're not learning in various other ways. They just kind of bring what they have to the table. And so in 2020, when we locked down in the pandemic, I spent the summer hired a research assistant, interviewed 150 people from our ecosystem on this topic, wrote a manuscript, and we were about to publish when my co-founder of MindFrame Connect reached out to me, a friend of mine, and said, why don't we go turn this into something bigger? And so we went to the Canadian government, we got a grant, and we've now built MindFrame Connect, which is what you see today. You will see the culmination of this. Megan Coleman is our lead. She's on the line. Natalie McMullen also runs our comms, is on the line. And so and I'd encourage you to hit chat with any questions you have. Introduce yourself, feel free. We love the network and community side. We have a website, mindframeconnect.com. We'll encourage you to jump off to go deeper on these topics because we move very quickly. And, you know, I'm pretty happy to say we've launched this a year and a half ago or something like that. We've done 120 workshops. We've done almost 3,000 participants. We've taken a ton of feedback and iterated on it. And you are now getting the output of that in a 1 hour synchronous that is kind of the best practices on being an effective mentee. Okay. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. And I'm going to ask you to tell me that you can see it in 1 second. Can everybody see that? Yeah, nod, perfect. Okay, so I got to resize here on Zoom as one has to do. Mega's monitoring the chat for me. She'll stop if needed, and away we go. Okay, I talked about my background. I talked about the journey. I'm going to skip some. Look, you guys are founders. Okay, that's the point of this. We are driven by founders and by business builders, by prosperity on the back of that, and so on. In our interviews, we talked to a woman who was the EIR and entrepreneur in residence at MIT. She had the best quote as to why we do what we do. You as a founder, regardless of what you end up doing, you build a unicorn, you build a smaller company, you go to government, you go to not-for-profit, you go to corporate, whatever happens in your world, the act of what you are doing now changes your mindset permanently. We call it the entrepreneurial mindset. It changes how you look at obstacles. It enhances your resilience, and it does a million other great things for society, no matter what direction you go. And that's what inspires us every single day. The other thing that I say to everyone, and there will be a principle on this, is that we believe we all have an obligation to give back. Okay. And actually, what I like to say to people is the dirty little secret of mentorship is that you realize at a point that you're learning more from your mentee than you're actually giving. And when you have that revelation, you will never stop mentoring. So I encourage all founders to get out of their company box and to spend an hour a month with another founder who's coming up behind you and mentor them. And you will get a certain skill set that you won't have as what you do every single day. Okay. There's a principle on that we'll talk about. I also want to frame up how we think about the entrepreneur in a holistic way before we get into the principles, so I can give you kind of our ecosystem thinking. Okay. And what we have found in entrepreneur land is there is a tendency to get very tactical when you enter accelerators, when you work with mentors and so on. What do I mean by that? Everyone will have heard of the word minimum viable product. Everyone will have heard of customer development and discovery. Probably everyone has heard of business model mapping. Those are great. Those are important. Lean, startup, framework, monetizing innovation, those are important. But what happens when you start a company is you've made a decision to embark on a potentially multi-decade journey that is a sequence of ultra endurance marathons that you've decided to run. Okay, and when you put it in that context, we need a mix of the tactics of business building, but also the strategic side of treating an entrepreneur in a very holistic way. You are going to have tough days. I got a call, after when the pandemic hit, and you know how everyone got into disarray, 5 of our portfolio companies went to 0 in revenue in a week. Let me tell you, that's a different discussion than what's your business model, right? So there is a psychological and a resilience aspect to entrepreneurship that we need to recognize as part of the journey. And there are ways to be most effective on that. We found it so important that we built a work stream on that hopefully at some point I can come back to Startup TNT and do for you guys, because I think you'll get a lot of value. The second pillar that we talk about is mentors and coaches. This is what we're talking about today. You don't do this in a vacuum. There's a huge ecosystem around you that you can draw from to help you in a positive way, move faster and make less mistakes. Third, is frameworks. I always cite a Jeff Bezos quote. Everyone knows Bezos, founder of Amazon, right? Focus on what makes your beer taste better. All else can be codified. Okay, so you guys are doing something that is creating a moat, a durable competitive advantage, something that makes your beer taste better than everyone else's. That's where you focus. You're not going to go build QuickBooks and a new accounting system to do your accounting. You're going to use QuickBooks. Use frameworks wherever practical to not do everything from scratch. And fourth are your own competencies. Where do you come from as entrepreneurs? What are the 8 competencies that make a successful founding group? And where are you strong and weak in those? Where do you need to enhance those? When I'm mentoring, I have these 8 competencies in the back of my head. And I'm going to call people's names. You do not have to say anything. I just use it for explanation. Let's say Ruth Levin and I are on a mentor discussion, and Ruth and I are going through an issue. And I can see that Ruth is struggling in a competency. I might even call it out. Hey, Ruth, you know what? Pitching and strategic selling is a core founder competency. Okay, we'll talk about that in a bit. You know what? I see you're struggling a little with your pitch. Let's talk that through. You want to add a pitch coach here? Understanding your competencies and where you're strong and weak are a superpower. Okay. So, and my point here is that this is serious. You guys are building serious businesses. You are changing society. You are having impact. This isn't willy-nilly. We want structured, holistic thinking for the ultra endurance marathons that you are going to be running. Okay. This presentation breaks into 4 components. One is the principles of menteeship. That is the crux of this. There are 25. They came from the 150 interviews. We looked for patterns. We codified them. We talk about them each one here quickly. We're not going to do speed menteeing today, unless Neil tells me to, and I'm happy to do it. It's a short on how to run those 20-minute Mentor Madness meetings as effectively as possible, used by Creative Destruction Lab, Techstars, and certain others. Third is the long form meeting. So you get a mentor. Ruth has a mentor. I'm her mentor. And we're meeting every week or 2 for an hour, maybe every month, maybe every quarter, whatever it is. There are best practices for how that interaction can go. And I want to talk about those. And then last but not least, mentor personas, giving you some feel for the style on the other side of the table and how you can see patterns and be ready for that. Fair? Okay. Before I get into the principles, final thing is we do a similar workshop for mentors. We did it for you guys like a week or 2 ago. And what I say to mentors and what I want you to understand is there are 3 components to effective mentorship. One is time. So Bryce and Ruth getting together, spending time together, and each of us will allocate the time that we have and want to do. As I've said to you guys, once you start mentoring and realize you're learning more, Ruth is teaching me continuously on Theragraph, whatever her company is. Like, you just never stop doing that. Let me tell you, I'm 51. I mentor a Web3 crypto person. I'm learning continuously. Okay, it's like superpower. They're learning about some stuff from me. I'm learning about some stuff from them. 2 is judgment. Where do you come from? What are my competencies as a mentor? And I say to mentors, you want to make sure you have a kit bag of frameworks, like I say to entrepreneurs, so you can speak the language of the ecosystem and extend your judgment and contextualize it. And 3rd is competencies. And this is no slur on mentors. We love mentors. But guess what? If you were being mentored by me prior to 2018, all of my bad behaviors, my type A business driving personality, talking 90% of the time, not listening effectively, all that stuff is manifested. And so what we are trying to do with mentors is elevate their side of the craft as well, so that they can have a better interaction with you guys and really understand how that relationship should work best. Not all will have taken that. Not all will have thought about that. You as a mentee need to recognize that and manage that. Last but not least, becoming a more competent mentor. If you decide to follow what I'm saying and start mentoring on the other side of the table, it will make you a better human and leader. We did a workshop at CDL Atlantic. We had a senior NATO naval American officer on the workshop. And at the end of it, he said, this will make me a better dad and a better human. And I'm like, we took that quote. We'll take that any day of the week. Last but not least, the resources available to become better as a mentor or a mentee skew massively to mentors. No one it's crazy to me. The relationship centers on you. You guys are often younger and less experienced in your journey. And no one focuses on helping you have a better interaction. I, to this day, don't understand this. You should be the focus, not us. Okay. Here we go. 25 principles. There are lots of materials that we have handouts for and so on to help you explore this further. If you don't have a package yet, you will have one after this. Okay. All right. Principle 1, build your foundation. So the first 2 principles, I like to say, look inside oneself before you look outward. Okay. Remember, I'm a mentor. I can't express to you the demands on my time every day. Everyone wants mentorship. Okay. I get lots of reach outs. How do I decide? Remember, it's a 2-way relationship. How do I make decisions on who I'm going to spend time with equally to who you're going to spend time with? Okay. Well, I asked mentors that question, and the word that came up the most is people who are interested in their own personal growth and can express that. Okay. I talked to Janet Bannister, ran Real Ventures, and she said, look at this. People who are dedicated to personal growth, have a strong moral compass, are thoughtful about what they do and why they do it, and want to work hard. Showing those attributes when you're networking to meet mentors and to start working with them is a superpower, and it helps mentors understand that what you're trying to do, and it contextualizes you for them. And it's important when you're trying to find mentors to do that. You know, I hate to say it this way, there's a lot of people competing for our time, and it is a competition to a degree. Okay, Michelle Romano. Many of you will know this name. She's a dragon. She founded Clearco. She had a great quote here. I think what gets in people's way, people have to be clear, but the negative Nancy. So again, I come back to mentors are looking at you. As an entrepreneur, what I say to people is, one of the things that we are in is we're in the optimism business. We're building something positive for the future. If all you tell me is, if Ruth is a chronic pessimist, I would say to her, maybe we should talk about your choice of vocation. But I would also say that comes on me, your pessimism. And it doesn't make me want to work with you for long periods of time when all I'm hearing about is the negative. So again, a bunch of attributes that we want to think about how we present ourselves to the mentor community, to others, in terms of, you know, kind of having that mutual relationship. Now, to conclude on this, we codified what we heard into 4 bullet points. 1 is discover your personal brand. 2 is your reputation. 3 is understanding your strengths and weaknesses. Be confident, be optimistic. And 4th is think longer and broader. Now, what I will say about this is very foundational. This is very, again, looking inside oneself. Think about what it is you're looking for in mentorship. Think about yourself and how you present. Think about optimism as an entrepreneur, and think about the other side watching you and wanting to work with you. Okay, principle 2, define your goals and purposes in seeking mentorship. 95% of mentors told us that, generally speaking, the mentees that find them don't know why they're seeking mentorship. Differentiate yourself by thinking about that before you reach out. Why are you looking for this? You know what, Ruth, sorry, you're my target today. Are you okay with that? Tell me if you're annoyed and I'll use someone else. Ruth talks about fundraising. You know what? I'm building this business. I've started to get my traction, and I'm crossing a major need to think about capital. That's a very defined tactical goal. Okay, Bryce, you know what? I met you at Startup TNT with the gang, and I'd like a little bit of time. Theragraph does this, and I'm changing society, and I'm doing this, and I've now reached a fundraising inflection point, and I'd like to have a few sessions with you. Very clear, right? Some goals are less clear. That's okay. You know what? It's the ultra marathon. I got to run it. Can we talk about some of the dark days that I'm having and how I can be better at standing up from failure? You know, it can go in many. Have the goals codify at least to a small degree to contextualize for what it is you're looking for. Okay, principle 3, multiple mentors ensure diversity of guidance. I want to say to you guys, no one on this Zoom should ever have one mentor, and they should not have multiple mentors that all look like me. Okay. What you want is diversity of thought. You've heard that term a lot. You want mentors to be able to check them. You can check the guidance that you're getting, watch for biases, and make sure that you have, again, a diverse group around you to help you with whatever your issues are. Okay. Kim Furlong runs the Canadian Venture Capital Association, just had it great. Multiple people, diversity of thought, and so on. And look, we know a lot of the tropes around diversity and so on and the power of it. I look at it from a business context. Eva Lau was a co-founder of Wattpad. Okay, sold for, I don't know, $800–900 million a couple of years ago. Good friend. She said, just to give you one example, she said, when we were building Wattpad, we had this diverse group of people around the table thinking about how to go to market and so on. One of them was from Indonesia. We didn't know how to spell Indonesia. We ended up targeting that market because we had that diversity of thought, and it became one of our most successful markets. Think about that, right? Do you have the right diversity around the table to take you in the broadest directions you can go? Okay, principle 4, seek out peer mentors. You guys are a cohort here. You're going through a business building journey together. Yes, you can look to people like me who built businesses, exited, and are now back in the flywheel. But what about 5 of you getting together once a month, where Ruth, Nick, Darren, Charles, and Alicia get together in a room, and someone is tasked with bringing the problem of the month? Ruth, I'm struggling with hiring. I'm struggling with talent retention. It's a tough market. People are poaching my guys away. Can we talk about that? 5 of you sit around and you each tell stories about your own experiences of that issue, what you're doing in your own businesses for employee retention, for talent management, and so on. I guarantee you will all pull something out of that that's very powerful. Peer mentorship. You've heard of Young Presidents Organization, EO, these kinds of things. There's a reason they exist. It gets out of the power dynamic that we're talking about. It brings peers together who are at a similar stage, who are going through similar issues, and you get together and you talk about an issue. There are best practices to do that. We've put a few in here. It's a superpower. I know peer groups that have been together for over a decade that have become profound friends. They travel together, they do retreats together. It's a superpower. Okay, principle 5, board members, shareholders, and competitors can be mentors. Laura Lenz co-runs Omer's Ventures Canada. She said to me, I'm a shareholder, I'm a board member of a lot of these companies. I am so invested in their success. I want to be an effective mentor for them. I'm on about 15 boards. I consider every CEO and management team as a mentee relationship. Okay. I'm going to do well personally if they do well. And yes, there's a fiduciary obligation as a board member that is different than just being a mentor. We all agree on those incentives. We understand them. If there's a conflict, we manage the boundaries, but I am as invested as anyone in your success. Michelle, again, really interesting comment. And I actually internalized this for our wireless experience when we had 2 other new entrant competitors. We could have done better work as a competitor group, coming together, knowing the boundaries, and actually talking about issues that don't cross competitive thresholds. I think you should think about that in your businesses. I think it's very interesting. Yeah. Principle 6. Okay, I talked about entrepreneurs being in the optimism business. Another business that you're in is the networking business, right? As much as many people may say, I don't like to network, get that out of your mind and understand that your ability to network and pitch, talking to other founders, talking to customers, talking to shareholders, talking to investors, talking to mentors, the effectiveness of getting comfortable with networking and 6 degrees, 2 degrees, 3 degrees becomes a superpower for you as a founder. And it is how you start to find mentors. Some people aren't great at it. That's okay. There are lots of ways to get better. Okay. What I say is, we put up one example here. Thank God for Google, right? Thank God for all this stuff because it's all online. There are tactics that one can use to network effectively if they struggle. Okay, here's an easy example. Let's say Neil's hosting a startup TNT event in person in Calgary, and I'm there, 50 other mentors are there, and you guys are all there. And there are 3 people that you target because you have the guest list ahead of time that you really want to talk to. And let's say you're not super comfortable with ice breaking. So you know what? You go and you have a mentor and you talk to them about networking and, how do I go up to Seshchuk and have a little chat with him? And they give you an icebreaker. And you come to me at that networking event, we shake hands and you say, you have your little thing to start with, okay? Boom, you're now networking. And let me tell you, I don't bite. I love founders and I want to talk and then you start to get comfortable and you get warmer and you understand authenticity and so on. And you keep building and building on that. We have won in our businesses by our networks, okay? Principle 7, find great mentors. I come back to my quote. 95% of mentors told me that mentees generally sought them out without goals to understand why they were looking for them, and they were looking in general for the wrong mentor. Okay, so let's just talk that through. Last time I checked, we have unlimited resources to research people for what we might be looking for. I keep using this example, but I laugh at it to this day. I did one of these workshops for the University of Saskatchewan. They have a science-based program there. Okay. And I said randomly, I said, you know, the world is so open now and so small with digital that I'm going to guess that there's an Australian researcher who's very relevant to one of you that has the IP knowledge of what you're building that would be a great mentor. And I just sloughed through that. And I said, you know, you could reach that person. And then I moved on. After that frickin' session, someone emailed me who was an attendee and said, you are not going to believe this. I'm having a call later today with an Australian PhD postdoc who is researching the issue that's relevant for my company. I made that completely up. And that came back to me. It's like, you know, Nick Depricita. I don't know what you're building, Nick. Maybe it's something very interesting from an IP standpoint. I will guarantee you that there are 3 people in the world that are experts at what you're looking for that could mentor you. And if you reach out to them and you contextualize what you're doing, you ask them for a discussion. You don't jump at mentor, but you ask them for a discussion and you start a relationship, they will listen. Okay. It's all about the thoughtfulness of the reach out, the contextualization, and the fact that if it makes sense to reach out to them and you've been thoughtful about it, it makes sense for them to respond. Okay. The other thing I like to say to people is that your existing networks are bigger than you realize. Church, school, university, peer, parents of peers, startup TNT, everyone wants to help everyone. Okay. This is a great ecosystem. Your networks are bigger than you realize. Okay. All right. Principle 8, make the most of that startup TNT. I think there's some matching that gets involved. I don't know exactly how the program works. Great. Love it. Guess what? It's hard for Neil to perfectly match every mentor and mentee. We only know so much about each side. The human connection is real. We don't all connect perfectly. If it works, that's awesome. Give it your best effort to make it work. If it's not doing what you need it to do, that's okay. Be authentic with the other side, shake hands, go to Neil and say, look, we want to disengage and we want to reset with a different mentor mentee. That's okay. Principle 9, watch, listen, learn. So we started in our founder interviews, we started hearing this concept that we call mentorship by osmosis or stealth mentorship. Huda Adries, beautiful founder, Dot Health, high impact startup, gave us this comment. She said she was learning more from people that didn't know they were mentoring her than she was learning from mentors. I'm like, Jesus, that's unbelievable. And what do I say? Okay, you're at Creative Destruction Lab. Ruth is at Creative Destruction Lab. She's in the big room. There's another founder that's on the hot seat. I'm talking to them about something. Ruth is in the corner listening, and she picks up a nugget from that. And she takes that and she uses that in product-led growth and go-to-market in her business, okay? Do that all the time. It's crazy the amount of insight you can get when it's not the formal world of mentorship. The other side is, I say to mentors, you need to be aware that that is happening continuously. And if you're at a networking event, you get smashed and you start shooting your mouth off, that's not good. There's a power dynamic. You get put on a pedestal. So what I say to mentees is be careful of that information. Make sure they know what they're talking about, not shooting their mouth off. But there's a lot of power in drawing that information. Okay, principle 10, do not ignore inbound messages of support. You know, we get a lot of clutter, right? LinkedIn, email, whatever your digital thing is, there's a lot of clutter now. Every once in a while in that clutter, there's a beautiful thing. Huda gave the example when she launched her product and made an announcement, she got a cold reach in from a female medical executive who loved her mission, wanted to take her under her wing and open up her network and help her as a mentor. She's become a lifelong mentor to Huda. Do not ignore, sift through that. And if it looks interesting, pursue it. Okay, principle, guess what? I'm assuming most people on this call are Canadian. One of our personality cultural traits as Canadians is we're not good at asking for things. Let me tell you, another superpower of a founder is the ability to ask. And guess what? If you're in, I like to say to founders, another business that we're in is the rejection business. When we were fundraising for wind, I took more no's. If I got any sniff, I was like, this is a great day, because I would take 10 no's to get that sniff. It took us 100, 200, 300 no's to get to that fundraising for when we almost missed the deadline. So look, your superpower, I say to all founders, when we're meeting, I want 3 agenda items and I want 2 asks. I want to force you to make a couple asks. We can talk through your asks. Always ask. The worst thing that can happen is they say no. Guess what? You're going to hear a lot of no's. Who cares? Principle 12, harness the digital transition. I don't think I need to talk a lot about this. This was relevant in the pandemic. I used my LinkedIn example about Australia. You can get to anyone, anywhere, no fear, be contextual, be thoughtful, be authentic, be genuine. Principle 13, ask mentors about conflicts. Very important principle. When we were talking to founders, we heard a number of comments about how they felt their mentors were actually using them to mine them for competitive information. Yes, you heard that right. That is not, I'm not making that up, and it blows me. I fall off my chair when I think about that. The reality is that a mentee-mentor relationship is built on a foundation of trust. Trust means that you, Alicia, can feel complete confidence in your mentor, that they have your best interests at heart, there are no conflicts, and so on. I like to tell a story. Techstars, Toronto, in the pandemic, got very global with their cohort. I was mentoring a company from Vietnam in Mentor Madness. This is a beautiful company. They were building prosthetics for arms for amputees in emerging markets, very mission driven. Stunningly, we have an investment in a prosthetics company in Toronto called Smart Arm. I go on the Mentor Madness thing, and at the opener, I said to the founders, I want to declare to you guys that I have a potential conflict. I'm an investor in a company called Smart Arm, and they build prosthetics. Not only did I create a complete level of trust by saying that, they ended up asking me to be one of their lead mentors. They now understood the boundaries, and we work closely together on their issues. You are allowed to ask mentors about conflicts. If Ruth has a mentor who she knows has an investment in something that maybe crosses over, you can ask about that. We have an investment in 2 cloud kitchen deals. One of the founders asked me if there was issues with the conflict. I'd forgotten to declare it. Not nefarious, I just forgot. And I said, hey, you know what? Great point. I do have another investment. Just so you understand how I handle these situations, I use, very tight lines between things, and nothing you ever tell me would cross over. And again, building foundations of trust. Okay, principle 14, the mentor-mentee relationship centers on you, and you need to own it. Stunningly, most mentors, particularly new mentors, forget who the relationship centers on. They think they're Moses. I'm coming down from Mount Sinai. I'm going to bring the 10 commandments to Ruth. I'm going to tell her exactly what to do, and she is going to be a perfect entrepreneur. Guess what? The world doesn't work that way. My job as a mentor is to do actually the opposite of that. It's to let Ruth tell me her issues. It's to talk about her challenges. It's to center on Ruth's needs. It's to I can't provide her prescriptive advice. I'm with her for an hour every month. I don't know what's going on in her business. That's insulting in some ways to think I could do that. So our job is not to, our job is not to center on ourselves and what we built as mentors. It is to center on Ruth and what she's building as a founder. Okay. There are centering techniques that you can use. Okay. Here are a few. One is you own the agenda to every meeting. So if Charles and I are getting together, I want him to send me an agenda 3 days in advance with 3 items and 2 asks. That way he's in my head for 3 days ahead of that. And I'm thinking about his agenda and I'm thinking about my knowledge around that, and he's ahead of it. That centers the meeting. When we are in the meeting, okay, if we're doing the classic Canadian thing and we're a half an hour into the meeting and we're still talking about the weather, guess what? You guys got to bring that back to the fairway and you've got to push that through. Okay. You can set ground rules that are very transparent. Charles, I talk a lot. If I'm talking too much, I want you to stop me. Charles, I interrupt. I apologize in advance for doing that. It's not meant to be negative to you. Okay. And so on and so forth. You can do that. Always use the clock, watch your hour, bring it back to the top issues. And guess what? It's also on you to have some information about the topic. So if Alicia wants to talk to me about product-led growth, I expect her to know something about product-led growth before we start talking about it, and she doesn't come in completely cold. So let's work together mutually. I see Megan has a hand up. Go ahead, Megan.
We have two questions in the chat.
Yeah.
The first one is, what are the most effective ways to approach a mentor? Essentially,
Yeah.
what are some good examples of mentor watering holes?
Watering holes, brilliant. Okay, so pre-pandemic, networking was rampant. As you know, tons of these kinds of events. People are happy, they're talking, they're loose, they've had a couple of drinks or whatever. Those are great forums, okay? Be calculated. Charles has a startup in telecom selling X to Y. He comes to me, hey, you did wind. He knows a little bit about me. You've researched me a little bit. You have an icebreaker. We start talking, and then we have a coffee after. Okay, so the end of that example is 30-minute coffee. Okay, and then you start building a relationship, and then you see where that goes. Does it translate to a mentor relationship and so on? So those are the in-persons. There's a million of those. Then you have the accelerator kind of stuff that's going on. Creative Destruction Lab. You go to Creative Destruction Lab, there's a network there of hundreds of mentors. Hundreds. You're not going to see them all, but you have this crazy ability to access them. So if I'm a CDL, I am a CDL mentor. If Darren has an issue at CDL and reaches out to me and says, I'm not even in your stream, but I heard about you and I know that you have a certain skill. So you're giving me some stroke there. And there's some social proof because of CDL, then guess what, Darren? I'm going to take that conversation and we're going to have an initial discussion. So we're using some authenticity. You're narrating a problem. You're relating it back to me. You're using some social proof and so on. Those are examples of ways. And then there's the colder stuff. Okay. So, if Alicia has got a very specific domain that she's working in, some life science vaccine we'll pick that has some very specific set of researchers globally that one would look to, maybe there's a way in her network to get a little bit closer, a little bit warmer to them, that Australian IP example. And then you can start paving the way to have the reach out that again is authentic and contextual and so on. So varying degrees depending on the tools we're using and the farness away from someone the mentor is. Okay, back over, Megan.
Perfect. How can one battle a feeling of imposter syndrome when thinking of the value that I can bring as the mentee?
Okay, so I want to say, okay, good question, actually, because I had you noticed probably in a slide, I talked about consider what value you can bring them to the mentor. What I say to founders is I don't want you to overplay that. Okay, I see some founders come in and they're like, how can I help you? Do you want me to introduce you to someone in my network? Do you want to do it? We do that later. Okay, we have to get a relationship first. And my job as a mentor is actually to center on you. So remember what it is that I'm looking for. I'm looking for people who are focused on personal growth, people who have thought about the goals of what they're trying to achieve. They've contextualized it. They've related it to my skills. That's what I'm looking for. Okay. From there, I will tell you that probably we have 100 directs in our portfolio. Probably 20 of those were introduced by a founder or a mentee. So it is not zero, it's non-zero, the reciprocation of value, but not day one. Let's get our first relationship started and don't try to be too earnest on showing me value. Okay. Your value is I'm going to learn a ton from you and be confident in that. Okay. All right, let's keep going. The most important principle, take advice with a grain of salt. Remember how I talked about the Moses syndrome, 10 commandments to Ruth? We're not doing that. Okay, take a read of this first sentence. This is a woman who is running a beautiful startup called SheerTex. Anyone know that startup here? It's non-rippable pantyhose, hosiery, okay? She's reinventing textile. She's awesome, global thinker. She went through CDL and she said this in 5 minutes into my interview with her. I have never received a usable piece of tactical advice from a mentor in Canada. Oh my God. I was like, what the hell? What are we doing as mentors to get that comment? And I started to research this topic more and it became very clear this is where I was saying, my job as a mentor is not to try to think that I could come into Ruth's business 1 hour a month and give her a prescriptive to do and how exactly to do it. I can't do that. I'm not capable or qualified to do that. My job is to ask Ruth good questions, to listen to her issues, provide generalized insights, give her some experiences that I might have had that could be relevant to her. She takes that, she contextualizes that to her business, and she uses it most effectively. That's what our job is as mentors. This came up 100 times, okay? You do not take prescriptive advice with, as Bible. I'll give you a simple example to highlight. If Alicia comes to me, or let's use a new person, someone else needs to get picked on here, Justin Logan. Justin comes to me, he's building a SaaS business, and he says, Bryce, what do you think I should price my software product at? If I say, Justin, $200 a month, what is that? That makes no sense, right? No. If Justin says to me, what should I price my SaaS product at? I say, Justin, go get a pot of coffee because we're going to be here for a while. He comes back. And the first thing I ask is I start asking him a little bit about his business. I start asking him a little bit about his product. I mention a framework on pricing called monetizing innovation that is my favorite. I talk about the concepts of value capture and value creation. I ask him about his competition. I ask him about durably how he differentiates himself. I ask him if he's product-led versus sales-led versus marketing-led. I talk about, is he free to freemium to paid? I talk about trials. I talk about what if he prices too low or prices too high. I talk about pilots. I talk about LOIs. And 55 minutes into that discussion, when we have 5 minutes left, I say, Justin, I'm now going to move from being a mentor to being one of your prospective customers. And now let's talk about price. And at the end of that 5 minutes, where I'm now a customer, no longer a mentor, I say, ask 20 other people what I've just said to you about, or my view on price, because I'm probably wrong. Okay, that's how a mentor should work. Okay, if you get the $200 answer, then what your job is to tease out the insight. Hey, Bryce, that's a very abrupt answer. Could we talk about how your brain worked to get to that answer? And then you actually flip the script and you start drawing it out of me. Okay. Principle 16, you can challenge your mentor. People struggle with the power dynamic. We know that term, right? Mentor, mentee, founder, business person, whatever the case may be. People do not feel comfortable sometimes challenging what the mentor says. A good mentor opens the field for you to do that. I love when founders come to me and say that is not making sense. Matthew Powell. Matthew says to me, I've given him some guidance. Matthew says, hey, you know what? 3 other mentors said the exact opposite, Bryce. You say that nicely to me because we're humans. And I'm like, I love that. Okay, let's talk that through, Matthew. What did you hear from the others? Let's work our way through that. And let's work through why we might be different and what my thought pattern is. You can challenge. Principle 17, second most important principle, listen to feedback constructively without getting defensive. People forget the purpose of mentorship. Our job is to talk to you about things that you don't want to hear and give you the tough feedback in a constructive way. That is what our job is, right? Ruth, you're running off the side of a cliff with your business and how you've narrated things to me. I want to stop you from doing that. And here are the 3 issues that I see in that. Are you okay to go down that road with me and talk about that? It's tough for you, right? There's ways I can work with Ruth to buffer the severity of it, but there's some honest feedback that's required. And that's why we're working together. Okay, if you want to go further with this principle, Elizabeth Yen runs the Hustle Fund in the Valley. And what she said to me is her #1 red flag. She invests at the earliest stage, idea stage. She invests in the people and in the idea. And what she said to me is her #1 red, she doesn't have anything to go on. She's like, defensiveness is one of my #1 red flags to not do an investment because I know what that relationship is going to be like over the 10 years we're going to be working together. So at a bare minimum, show up well for investors by not arguing every single point and fighting for the sake of fighting. Okay, if you get that tough feedback, sometimes it's not delivered in the nicest way. That's okay. Hold your head up. Be the bigger person. Listen to it. Digest it. They're a smart person telling you and take it for what it is. Okay, principle 18. If you want good answers, ask good questions. One of your superpowers as a founder will be getting better at asking questions. You need to draw it out. You need to be thoughtful. You need to peel back the layers of the onion in a Socratic way and go deeper and deeper with the mentor to pull their insights out and so on. In the bibliography, we've included some question frameworks. I would encourage you to take a look at them. They'll show you how to sculpt different sides of a way of asking the question. Okay, principle 19, jettison the pessimist, small thinkers. And okay, so what do I mean by this? You guys are entrepreneurs. You're in the optimism business, okay? You're changing society. You're contrarian by nature, right? You're doing something that hasn't been done for a reason. Some mentors don't play well to that, okay? They want to poop on your idea. They don't think of it the way, so Mark Andreessen has a great quote. There's no such thing as a bad idea. There's bad execution and bad timing. That's how I would like all mentors to approach things with founders, okay? You have an idea, you are you. You're going to pivot. I've never invested in something that hasn't changed 50 times between when I invested and when it launched, okay? That is the world. We pivot, we change. So what do I look for? I look for the people. I look for their ability to execute. And I want to be optimistic about their prospects. And any idea I've seen, when it meets the market, it changes continuously. And it's their ability to do that that's most important to me. Okay. If you get the pessimist and they give you their feedback and they can't get past the pessimism of what you're doing, don't do that month after month. It's not good for you. It's not good for them. Shake hands, move on, thank them for their feedback, and go on with someone who wants to support you optimistically. Principle 20, very important. You run your business, you run your life. I've heard a few founders over the years say, blame their mentor for a decision they made. Let me tell you guys, that is a beyond a no-go zone. Your job is to go to mentors, to get their judgment, to distill it into a decision-making framework that then you decide what you're going to do with that. Your mentor isn't running the company. They're giving you their best, and you can never blame them for that. I love this quote from my bud, Matt Leibowitz, who's a VC. The mentor can give you support and guidance. They can't do the fighting for you. Never blame the mentor. In the bibliography, we do have a link to a weighted decision-making framework. You're going to hear a lot of disparate advice. It's hard to make sense of it. Barack Obama quote, if I ever had 50% of the information to make a decision as president, I was ahead. So you got to figure out how to make decisions under uncertainty. It's one of the core superpowers of a founder. Principle 21, give feedback. Feedback is another superpower, okay? People don't want to tell mentors how things went. They don't, we don't give each other good feedback as to how. If Ruth and I have an hour-long meeting, we've built that foundation of trust. At the end of the meeting, I will ask her, on a scale of 1 to 10, how did I do, Ruth? And how can I make this a 10? And I would hope that she would be receptive to the same feedback. Okay, that's how we get better together. By the way, this is a good Calgary boy, Craig Elias. For those who know him, he always wears the orange shirt. Watch Craig in his orange shirts. I love the man. Okay, principle 22, follow up effectively. This became more prevalent in the last couple of weeks as we've been doing this research, this workshop. I've had multiple numbers of founders come to me and say they took this advice on follow up very specifically and it has worked wonders for them. Here's what I'll say. Most founders do not follow up with mentors or in group sessions and so on with the people they were interacting with. You will differentiate yourself just by the act of following up. What do I mean by that? Let's say that we're at Techstars and we do a 20-minuter, Alicia and I. At the end of that day, overnight, Alicia's done a bunch of those. She has my name. She took some notes. She has something to say. She sends me a note overnight. Thank you, Bryce, for that meeting. 2 things I took away from that. Would you like to have another meeting? And would you like to get on my distribution list to get updates on my company? That takes 5 minutes. It's templated, most of it, and some of it's contextualized. 99.9% of people do not do that. When I talked about follow-up and said, reach out within networks and send them something, someone came back to me and said, I took your advice and I did that at CDL. And I got a great response from a mentor, and I'm now having a meeting with them. There are basic things that you can do to create network effects. Do them, okay? Studios, labs, incubators, and accelerators. You guys are in Startup TNT. Maybe you'll go to Techstars, maybe you'll go to CDL. When you decide to go to an accelerator, there's an opportunity cost. Sometimes you're diluting, it's obviously time. Go to other founders that went through it, Go to mentors that know those programs and make sure they're right for you. Principle 24, mentors will change over time, and that is okay. We are not joined at the hip for life as founders and mentors. Okay, we are humans. There's a point in every relationship where it thins out. I have a couple that are a decade long. I meet them twice a year. I have many that end in a year. There's no problem with that. Disengage with humility at the right time. Move on. I guarantee you will come back to me and you will thank me for something and tell me how great it's going. And I will love the fact that it's gone well for you. Principle 25. Here's the turn of the flywheel to its end. Conclusion. Make sure you mentor others. Okay, I've talked a lot about that. I won't restate it. It is a beautiful experience. Okay, we have a slide here that is the 15 principles. You get more because you're founders, right? You get 25. The mentors only get 15. There's the 15 for mentors. Take a read of them. You can go onto our website to get more information. Now, we are running out of time, and I want to spend 5 minutes on long form meeting techniques. So I'm going to do that. And then if we have time, we'll take a question or two and we'll talk about long form or mentor personas. Okay, so long form meetings. This is the 1 hours. Justin, Logan, and I are now meeting for an hour periodically. How do we get the best out of that relationship? Okay, here we go. So approach the meeting as follows. If Ruth was a client of mine and I was charging her, I would charge her probably $5,000 an hour. Ruth is building a business that could be worth $1 billion. Every hour of her time is precious. Think about the relationship that way. We are not talking about the weather for half an hour. We are talking about serious topics to advance businesses and to mutually learn. We recommend an hour. We find it 30 is too short, 90 is too long, except the first meeting. In the first meeting, we recommend 90 minutes, and we recommend the first half hour is done hey, Ruth, tell me about yourself. Where are you from? Why are you doing this? What's inspiring you? You know, let's get to know each other a little bit. Hey, do I have any conflicts? Let's talk about some of the investments I've made. We spend a half an hour starting to build that foundation of trust so that we can connect and we can work together long term. Okay. I feel like I have to mentor Ruth after this session, given that I feel like I've already started. Number 3, you guys own the meeting. Okay. 3 days beforehand, you send the agenda. It's the first centering technique. When we're in the meeting, I say to mentors, if you're speaking more than 50% of the time, you're speaking too much. Often mentors speak 90% of the time. You have the ability to center it using those techniques that we talked about. Always take notes. It's amazing how much falls on the floor that you had that great thing that you didn't write down and then it falls off. So much flies in a mentor session. Take notes. Allow for serendipity. Okay, what do I mean by this? Don't be too rigid. Okay, we have to allow, like we heard from a number of founders. You guys are on a lonely journey, right? You're getting beat up every single day. Everything's hard about entrepreneurship, and they don't teach you this in school. Who's done? I've done this before. I've struggled. We almost went bankrupt 5 times and went. You know what? When you're in that dark day, you can talk to me about that. I want to talk about that. That's more interesting to me than customer development and discovery. You can bring those things to the mentor-mentee relationship. Okay. These are not love meetings. This is not, Ruth, tell me for an hour about how great you are and how all the things you did from our last meeting. No. 5 minutes to check in how things are going, how well it's going, what were your successes, and then we're into 55 minutes of problems. Ruth, what are your big 3 that you need to knock down to get to your next milestones, to add the most enterprise value to your business and your life? And let's focus on those. Okay. Prioritize and identify your barriers. Okay. We believe in objective setting. So we want every meeting to end with 3 actions. Ruth, fundraising. I want you to prepare a pitch deck. I want you to prepare a first cut of an investor list, and I want you to do your virtual data room. Okay, we agree. Shake hands. At the start of the next meeting, we review those 3. How far did you go with it? Let's talk about that. Okay. Always thank each other. Ruth, we had a tough meeting. You know what? I talked to you about running off the cliff on these issues. You listened. I thank you for that. You are doing something special here, and I look forward to our meeting in 6 weeks. And I want to thank you for what you're doing. You know how positive it is when you end that way and then you look forward to the future? That is part of how you do this, even though we're doing some tough stuff here. Okay, set your objectives, agree on them, and move. Give feedback on a scale of 1 to 10. Ruth, how did I do? I mentioned personal items. And then last but not least, follow up. Send me the note after. 4 things. And then I will look at that note before Ruth and I meet again, and I'll refresh myself. Like, it's just, this creates this power feedback loop. Okay. We have a similar thing we tell mentors. The biggest problem you'll find with mentors is they don't prepare properly for a meeting. I encourage them all to do a bit of research on the topics. You've sent an agenda, make sure you understand the company, and so on. Okay. 2 minutes to 1. Let me stop. Do we want to, let's see if I have 1 o'clock. Guys. Yeah, I do have a 1 o'clock. Okay. Any commentary, questions that we want to ask? Or I could spend 1 minute on mentor personas. I like to squeeze every minute out of these, and there's a pattern in mentor personas that I want to talk about. Megan, is there any quick questions that I can answer?
There are several in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Just quickly.
Okay, hold on. Can you guys go
yeah.
past the hour? I'm going to send a note to my guys saying I'm going to be a couple minutes late. Can I do that? Anyone? Startup TNT, you can allow me to do that?
No problem at all. Keep going, Bryce.
Okay, hold on a second. I'm just sending a note right now. I will be 5 minutes late. Go ahead, Megan.
Do you have any advice on how to best incorporate these principles with existing mentor relationships that are not as effective as they could be?
Oh, so you already have a relationship and now you want to kind of take it up a level? Is that the right way to say it?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I would say is I'm a big authenticity, transparency guy. So let's say Gloria is part of Star. Okay, Gloria, you're in the mix now. We brought you in. Let's say Gloria and I are in a mentor-mentee relationship. I'd hate the fact that she would feel it was ineffective. I'd be very much trying to tease that out already. But let's say you've learned something today and you want to enhance it. I would literally say, in full transparency, I would say, Bryce, you know what? I took this mentee workshop and I learned a ton. And it's actually given me a little bit of a new perspective in how I want to work together with my mentors. And I'd like to talk to you about that. And I'd like to make I'd like to take some of the advice from that and bring that to our relationship. I think it'll make us stronger. Positive, not negative. Opportunity, not threat. All those kinds of things, right? And then I'd write them down. These are my 5 bullets that I want to change to our relationship. And let's talk that through. I'd probably do a session on that. And then I'd agree and move on. So that's how I would do it.
Perfect. Question from Ruth. Do you have any suggestions for discerning between when I or other team members might be sticking with our guns out of attachment to an idea versus a deeper, considered, or strong intuitive sense?
It's a good question. That's kind of the human principle stuff. Strong opinions, loosely held, Ruth. That's the motto. Strong opinions, loosely held. One of our superpowers is to defend and be very convicted in our opinions, but to not fall prey to what they call sunk cost bias or confirmation bias. And that is exactly what you're asking about. So if I'm an investor and I buy Microsoft stock, everything that I hear about Microsoft after that, I'm going to look at through rose-colored glasses because I own the stock. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's business partner, who is a true font of wisdom, is one of the best at talking about biases and about consciously working to recognize that we all have them. It's kind of reptilian almost, like if you go back to primal instinct and forcing oneself to consciously step out of those biases. I actually have a link to a article on, it's called something about human misjudgment, and it talks about our biases. I'm happy to share that with this crew. We'll get Megan to send it to Neil. Okay, it's from Munger's narrative. So that's my immediate reaction there. Megan?
Perfect. There's one more. We focused a lot today on one-on-one mentorship. I'd like my leadership team to receive mentorship as well. Should I encourage them to seek their own mentors, or should we do a group mentor?
Oh, I think you do both. I mean, that's an easy one, right? So if I'm in a company, look, we've had a lot of commentary from people who've taken this, that they want this brought into their organizations. I wrote in that manuscript, I wrote a chapter on employee mentorship, and we're actually turning that into a workshop. So we'll come back and do that for founders if you want to bring that into your organization. But what I would say to you is these are the principles we're talking about here are universal. They apply in all cases. I think it's insane not to have mentee programs in startup companies. I think it's insane. So I absolutely agree with doing that. But they should also be encouraged. You can't have everything contained within a company. You should be encouraged to get out of that box and broaden your horizon. So let's take an easy example. If I'm a chief revenue officer or I'm a go-to-market expert, I should be talking to other people in that domain that are senior to me, outside of my company, have done it before, maybe have more experience at it in a mentor-mentee relationship. Okay, that would be one example of getting outside of your company box. And there are many others. Okay, is that good, Megan? Okay, guys, I'm going to take 1 minute because I want to show you a pattern of mentor persona that I think you should be aware of. Okay, and we have a handout on this. Okay, I interviewed, like I said, 1 million mentors, and I started to see some patterns when I asked them, how do you mentor? And if I could summarize, there are a few questions that mentors ask to frame things that recur that almost have the same answer. And I'll give you the examples. So Elizabeth, I mentioned before, we call her the risk mentor. Ruth, what are your 2 or 3 biggest company risks? Do you actually know them? Do I agree with you? And are you prioritizing them properly? Okay, like I'm thinking about your business over the short term, midterm, and long term as to what are your massive priorities that allow you to declutter all the other crap that you get pulled into that you should be focusing on as your 3 North Stars. And let's figure out and prioritize that. Okay, look at this one. How can I help you? From Eva Lau. If I say to Ruth, how can I help you? That's a very loaded question. What I'm looking for is 2 things from Ruth. Almost the same as the risk question. What are your priorities? Do I agree with them? And the added thing with this question is, do you know anything about me and what I could help you with? So have you researched me? Have you learned anything about who I am? Okay, Matt Leibowitz, venture capitalist. Ruth, how do I make 10 times my money as fast as possible investing in you? That is the same question as the other 2, just phrased differently. What are the big things that you need to knock down to create the most scale in the shortest time possible? And so these questions that you get asked in these different ways, you can ground them back to a centering concept that always come back to priorities, risks, milestones, efficiency, scale, focus, simplicity, subtraction, say no to more than you say yes to, and so on. Okay. Now I do want to highlight one other thing. Patrick Lohr, good Calgary boy, Panache Ventures, has a really interesting technique. You come in to start a mentorship with him. One of his tactics is, Ruth, pitch me your business in 1 minute or less. You start going 45 seconds in. Ruth, I don't get this, this, and this. I want you to repitch to me with a little bit of feedback. You do that again. You do that 4 or 5 times. And at the end, you are better and he learns more about your business. I say to founders, you're also in the pitch business. You need a 1 sentence, you need a 15-second, you need a 30-second, you need a minute, 2, 3, 5, 15, and 1 hour. You need all those pitches down and you need to pull those out of your back pocket at a minute's notice. Okay. I got to go. I'm late for a board meeting. It's absolutely awesome hanging out with prairie peeps who are building companies, who are kicking some butt out there. Keep it up. You got us in your corner. Reach out on LinkedIn if you can spell my last name. You guys know Ukrainians out there. You probably could figure this out. Hit me on LinkedIn and keep doing what you do best. Okay.
Thank you so much, Bryce.
100%. I'm out.
Thank you kindly. Enjoy your day, everybody. That's all we got. We'll see you next week. Happy pitching.